Hi, everybody. This is Parent Coach Janet Bonnin of Fine Tuned Families, welcoming you to another great Wise Parents, Wise Kids conversation. We have these conversations on a regular basis with wise people to help us learn how to parent smarter. Today, we are starting our series, which we call the Teacher Talk series. We're inviting a number of teachers to join us for short conversations on how we as parents can help our kids become smarter, how we can help them love learning, how we can foster better behavior, all kinds of wonderful things around the world of education. First off, I'm going to say hello to Angie Woodrow, my partner in crime. Hi, Angie.
Hi, Janet.
Good to see you here. And though we don't have her on video, by phone, our guest today is a friend of mine named Karen Aitken, who is an elementary school teacher in my kids' school district, and she actually taught several of my children when they were coming through elementary a while back. Karen, I want to welcome you to the show, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you, Janet. I'm very excited to be here and to share. I'm actually a veteran teacher. I've been teaching for about 20 years. It was a second career. I was in the military, served in the Air Force, and then I got a degree in business, and I worked in marketing and accounting for a while. But my love has always been teaching and working with kids. I also have a 15-year-old son, and I have a 1-year-old granddaughter. And I am always creating curriculum and different kinds of materials to test out and use in my classroom.
And you've got a little interesting thing going on the side. Can you tell us just a wee bit about that?
The Teachers Pay Teachers?
Yeah.
Are you talking about? Yes. It's a hobby for me. It's something that I just love to do. And what I found is that oftentimes as a teacher, we don't have the materials that we really want to use. So Teachers Pay Teachers was a venue to give me the opportunity to really streamline what I wanted to use and have fun with it using graphics and things like that. And basically it's become my filing cabinet, because when I create it, I can download it quickly. I don't have to keep a hard copy, so I always have that available. I've put freebies on there, things that might be helpful to other teachers and also to parents. So there's some things on there that they can just download and look at for free. But that's just been one of my hobbies and fun things that I like to do.
Sounds fascinating. And I know at the end of our little conversation, you're going to share some resources that parents might like to know more about. So let's go ahead and get started. Karen's here today to talk to all of us, and this is the main theme of the question. Next slide, Angie. We'd love to hear from you as a veteran teacher and a fantastic teacher at that. What are some ideas that we can that can help our students, our children, become successful learners? So let's dive in and talk about it.
Absolutely. One of the things that I found is training students to be able to solve problems. I tell my students at the beginning of the year that being brilliant doesn't mean you've memorized everything. This year, we're going to learn how to use resources, how to be able to solve problems and find information. It's only the second week of school, but I've already trained my students. When I ask them what is expository learning, which we had just talked about this week, they're not going to retain that necessarily, but they know where to go. They'll get up out of their seats, they'll walk over to their journal that they have recorded information in, or they'll get their textbook and they'll come back and they'll find the answer. And I reinforce that very quickly by giving them what I call an Einstein moment. It's just a little bobblehead of an Einstein that I have several in my classroom. It just is a quick way of reinforcing that was a brilliant moment. You solved a problem. You found a resource. What I find with that, that it builds confidence. There's a quote that it's not what you do for kids that helps them to be successful. It's what you train them to do for themselves. And when what I find is the more that I release and enable my students to be able to do for themselves, the more confident and capable that they become.
And so what's popping up here for me in a way is I'm a trained and certified coach, and one of the things we do as we're working with families or whoever it is that we are passionate about coaching is we ask curious questions. We ask questions that are open-ended and designed to get people thinking. How would you go about doing this? What might be the steps? And that's some of what you're describing right here with young students, right?
Yes, it is, Janet. That's exactly right. A lot of times, and I know a picture is worth 1,000 words. One of the things I created that's also my Teachers Pay Teachers are these figurative language and teachable moment posters. And the first one I use at the beginning of school is it's a big nest with a bunch of baby birds with their mouths open. And I tell them learned helplessness is like these baby birds. They stay in the nest and they wait for the mom to feed them, and they're helpless. And I said, as students, oftentimes, you know, it's well into the year, and they'll walk up to you and say, now, where do I put this paper? Well, the box has been there all year, and they've been told, but it's that habit. Or my pencil's not sharpened, and there's a sharpener in the room, but it's this habit of just coming up and being helpless. But once you give them the self-awareness, the understanding that they have that problem, then they start to what I call fly out of the nest. They start to stop and think, oh, that's where I turn my paper in. Oh, that's where I go to sharpen my pencil. And when you start seeing them being able to do that, it really enables them to feel more successful and to get into that mode of stopping and thinking before they act.
And that also too builds that self-confidence, right? The sense, yes, I can do this, which is what we want to help our kids build that sense of, right? So
yes, we do.
What's our next tip?
Well, practicing organizational skills. One of the ways that a parent can really help at home with this is have a place that you set up specifically for where they put their backpack, their shoes, their lunchbox. Make that a routine that when they come home, it might be a hook on the door, it might just be some boxes, some crates, because what that does, it gives them that place where they know where they're going to put their stuff. And in the morning when they're rushing around, it relieves that anxiety of, oh my gosh, where's my lunchbox? I can't find my backpack. Where's my shoes? And what they start to understand is that the more organized they are, the less anxiety they'll have. And it becomes a routine. This is just kind of a nice, helpful tip at home that I kind of wish I'd used when my kids were little, because looking back, now it's better with my grandkids, I've learned, but looking back, you know, shoes were everywhere. Who knew where their backpack was? And in the morning, it was always chaos trying to get in the car and go to school.
I can remember that well. My kids were born three children in 4 years, and
Wow.
when they were little, chaos would reign in the morning if we didn't have some type of organization about where the backpacks were. One of our rules was, as they got into the older elementary school years, was the homework's not done until it's in your folder in your backpack. And that way there wasn't this in the morning, this sense of, oh my gosh, I worked so hard on that assignment. Where the heck did I leave it? And
yes,
you know, they're so proud and so wanting to get that assignment turned in, and they can't find it. So wonderful. And I know that helps. That makes a lot of sense, that it helps release stress or reduce stress. Our kids feel a lot of pressure these days, regardless of their ages. We set some pretty high expectations for them at times, and they're often very busy. So a little bit of organization can go a long way to helping them feel less stress in their busy lives.
And it starts their morning off on a better way, because I do this thing in the morning, my whole team does. We do morning greeting. We stand at the door every morning. We've been doing this forever, and we greet. We shake their hands. We make eye contact. And what I found is sometimes they come upset. And when I take that moment to ask them, hey, what's going on? You don't look too happy this morning. Mom yelled at me, or I got in trouble. And it's usually over that they couldn't find their folder. They weren't ready in time. They felt rushed. And so that's why I always try to encourage parents to have that organization for the kids, have that structure ready so they know where to put things, and then it's there in the morning. And it just kind of starts their day off on a better footing.
Excellent point. Okay, what's our next tip?
Well, learn to be an active listener. Again, I've kind of learned from my mistakes in life. I remember my daughter in third grade, the teacher would write me a note and say, she doesn't listen, she doesn't pay attention. And I always thought she'd outgrow that, or that would go away. I didn't know what to do. And then as she got older, that situation became worse. And as I became a teacher, I realized, that's when I'm up here talking, they're daydreaming. They might be looking right at me, and I think they're paying attention, but when I call on them, they don't have a clue. So what I do, it's just a simple little thing, is I tell my students, when I'm talking, some of you hear the Charlie Brown teacher, wah, 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 in the background, okay? I said, that's a habit because you're daydreaming. You're in la la land. You just don't even know it. I said, what I want you to do this year is practice repeating in your head what you hear the teacher saying, and then thinking about it in your own words. So when I call on you, and I do this often, I said it's an active listening check. I'm going to call on you. If you can tell me what I was talking about in your own words, then you are an active listener. And I might really reinforce that right away. Just, wow, you were tuned in. Now, if I call in a kid and they don't know, they'll just tell me, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening, I wasn't paying attention. So I'll say, call on a friend, because you don't really want to put them on the spot, but you want them to also understand what the problem is. That's the self-awareness. Wow, every time she calls on me, I have to admit I'm in la la land. This is the problem. Okay, now you're aware of the problem. Now you need to work on fixing it. And the first time that they come through and are able to tell you what you were talking about, you really seal the deal at that moment, and they start understanding. They can train their brain to be an active listener. And one of the problems, Janet, we have in society is kids are paying, the focus and the paying attention is more and more of a struggle. Mm-hmm. But just using a simple technique, getting them to understand there's going to be this immediate feedback thing going on. Practice at home. Parents often tell their kids to do something and the kid's not listening. So what I do, like with my grandson, I'll say, now, what did I just ask you to do? Just making sure you got all the instructions. Mm-hmm. And then he would usually repeat it back. And then I'd say, great, wow, you got it. So just a little thing, but it helps them to be in charge of their listening skills.
And that's so important in all aspects of life, especially with what I've done is I've created a series on communication within the family. And active listening is one of the big things that we really work on. If you cannot listen to what the other person is saying, you can't have a conversation. You can't move forward with a conversation if you can't learn to listen actively.
Exactly. And communication is key. Children need to learn how to communicate appropriately with their peers. There's so much with technology and, pulling them in that direction that it's still such an important skill that they are able to listen and be able to communicate. So I think that's wonderful that you've got that kind of training.
Yeah. And it really is important to learn from a young age. Okay, what's our next tip?
Yes, it is. Well, the next one is on taking ownership of self. Again, students oftentimes are used to somebody doing everything for them. Part of them gaining the sense of responsibility is the action of being responsible. I call it verb to the word. The label is responsible, but what's the action to show that you are?
Mm-hmm.
So again, when they show up with their homework in their folder, it's showing that they are being responsible. When they put their name on their paper, when they're doing their chores, when they take ownership, if you don't have to tell them to do their chores or to do their tasks, they're starting to take that ownership of this is what I'm supposed to do. And nobody's having to tell me. I always tell my students, I talk to your parents. And what I want to hear from your parents as we go through the year is that they're not having to say to you to come home and do your homework, that you are getting into the habit of coming home and getting your homework done. I said, because that shows to me that you are being responsible. And that's a trait that we really want to try to take ownership of. So that's something that I feel like students really need to attain.
And so that's also going back to the concept of being self-sufficient. Taking pride that you know how to manage your time, you know how to manage your responsibilities, you know how to manage your emotions. There's so many different things that our children need to learn as they grow. So being responsible for your own actions, being responsible for the little things, it's the building blocks for growing and maturing. And I imagine a lot of teachers in middle school who are very glad when students that you've had come through your classroom come their way.
And that's the joy of teaching, when they come back and see you and you had that impact on them early in life and that they're doing well. That's the joy. And, that's one of the things that really kind of keeps me in this profession. Knowing that kids are quirky, I also have a little fun with trying to get them to take ownership of work ethic, because a lot of times kids have that apathetic view of, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to learn that? So what I like to do is I like to pull in real world examples for them to relate to. Mm-hmm. And I've done that I wrote actually 4 different, what I call Reader's Theater work ethic skits. And I have we just had parent night last night. So I had 5 kids come with their parents, and they performed the hazards of the Laid Backers Plumbing Company. And what that is, it was a funny, quirky little skit that they put on, but the plumbers show up at the house with the lady who has the flooding house. They show up, and the whole way over there, they're looking at the lunch menu, trying to decide where to go to lunch. And when they get there, they look at each other and they said, I thought you brought the tools. Well, I brought the menu. I thought you were bringing the tools. And they couldn't do the job because they didn't have their tools. And we do this, and the kids use these a lot, but there's one on the plumber with no tools. There's the mechanic who does a rush job and doesn't tighten the tires on the car, and they fall off when the family's going on vacation. Then we have Dr. Lazzie, who cheated his way through college, and he's doing brain surgery, and now he can't, he doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah. And the last one is the Ding Dong Diner, where they don't have good health habits and people get sick. But it's just quirky, fun things, Janet. And, the kids are having fun. But what they do is they connect. They make a self-text connection to the skits and say, well, what I do now is creating the habits of who I'm going to become. I'm going to be that plumber who has his tools. I'm going to be that doctor who's knowledgeable and learned what he needed to learn. I'm going to be that restaurant that's 5-star because I have great health habits in my restaurant. So again, just something fun, but it helps them connect to the purpose of learning.
Fantastic. So what we've got, we've run through these wonderful tips, and we're at a point now where we'd love to have you share a couple of resources that teachers and parents might like to know about.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that is very helpful, I have a website called classroommastery.com. Mm-hmm. What that is, it has training for teachers, but it's relevant for parents, because in the process of coming up with the training podcasts on there, it was all about how would I want my child to be disciplined or taught or impacted if if I was the parent. So when I, as a teacher, had the parent perspective of everything that I do with other people's kids, I felt confident that it was things that parents would validate. So that's a resource, and it has a lot of information on it. There's my Teachers Pay Teachers site, where I have the Reader's Theater skits. I've had parents tell me that they downloaded one and did it with their kids just to get their kids to understand the importance of work ethic. There's also the Teachers Podcast, where we have interviewed librarians. We've interviewed people in positions where they work with children with different programs. So you get a lot of different perspectives and insights that are helpful. So those are some things that I have out there available.
And too, as parents, one of the best things we can do is decide on ways to support our teachers. So we've got to be willing to develop a partnership with our teachers in helping our kids love learning and be successful as learners. So one of the things we can do is reach out to our kids' teachers each year and say, this is who I am. I love my kid. I'm expecting that he or she's going to have a successful year, but what can I do to support that, right? Reaching out and asking as a teacher how to support that.
Yes, you're so right, Janet, because that communication is so important, because we have to remember that parents, teachers, we are the significant adults in the lives of children. And they live up to the expectations that we portray, that we have of them. Mm-hmm. So when teachers have that expectation that their child will be successful in their class, the child rises to that level. And the parent, when the parent feels it and verbalizes that they feel their child will be successful, it's very important, because that's part of keeping their emotional tank full and helping them feel like they're free to learn and able to learn.
So I know, too, you've got a tip for the parents, and I believe you kind of shared that earlier, but if you don't mind going back to it, I see this here on our notes. It's about creating a place at home where kids keep their things. Would you just remind us of that?
Yes, it's actually a tip, like I said, that I wish I had developed back when my kids were in elementary school, because we always had chaotic mornings. But I've noticed that a lot of parents have a designated space in their house where they have some hooks for coats and crates for shoes and backpacks and a place for folders, and so that just helps set that tone of organization. Another thing that I wish I had done is set a space for homework. At school, they have the proper lighting, they have the tools, they have a nice place to work. At home, it could just be the kitchen counter with a basket with their pencils and tools and stuff, but they just need a regular place where that's where they're going to sit and do their homework each night. Just helps them to have that kind of structure that sets the tone for success.
And this point here, I would love to suggest to parents too, to involve your child in designing that homework space. I know we talked about that in one of our previous recordings that we did, Karen, with you a couple of years ago. But involving your child in helping design the homework space. Do they want it to be quiet? Do they want to be in a place where the family members are coming through a little bit of activity in the background? Do they want to have some quiet music playing? Do they want a lot of lights on, or do they want it relatively spotlighted on their homework? So involving the student in designing it helps him or her feel a little more ownership over creating the space for success with their homework, right?
Absolutely, it sure does. And I know for my grandson, he just liked to have classical music quietly playing in the background. He's very much into, he's a musician, and he's in Yosa and all that, and he loves that quiet, kind of calming classical music. It just kind of helps him really concentrate. So each child is unique.
Yes.
So you're right, whatever it is that works best for them.
Yes, and I saw that in my 3 children. What they wanted as far as homework space was differing from child to child, and that's fine as long as they find it helps them get their homework done. Well, Karen, thank you so very much for being here today. We really, really appreciate you taking out time from your busy schedule. I know y'all are just a couple days into the new school year, so I hope that this is another wonderful school year for you. Thank you for being our guest.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Janet. I really have enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed having your children in my class, and I'm having a great year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Angie, thanks for being there also in the background, helping with the PowerPoint slides and just smiling and nodding along as we were talking. Everybody, please. Yeah, it was. It was a great conversation. Y'all, I just want to remind everybody, you can connect with me on the web at finetunefamilies.com. And as you see there, we've got a Twitter account, Janet Bonnin, or at Janet Bonnin through Twitter, Facebook. We've got a Fine Tune Families page. LinkedIn, I'm out there as Janet Bonnin also. So reach out and connect with us in some way. If you'd like to hear more about today's recording or other recordings, be sure to visit the website or send me an email asking for things. Thank y'all so much for listening, and I hope y'all have a great school year. Bye.
Bye.